Esports. Organized competition between both amateur and professional teams, struggling for a championship title to bring home to their families and their fans. Or, as the media will tell you, a bunch of nerds held up in a basement eating Doritos, drinking Mountain Dew, and screaming at a screen for no reason. The people that describe esports in a way such as this are the same type of people that say esports aren't physical enough to build across the gap from a simple game to a legitimate sport. Despite the fact that if we replace electronic video games in my esports definition with ball throwing activities, we could virtually use the same definition for traditional sports. Many of the defenders of esports embrace the similarities between the two and will point out that both require training, coaching, strategizing, teamwork, and not to mention lightning-fast decision-making skills. And come on, if we're going to give curling a free pass, then why are we even talking about this? Well, I could just say, oh, people are salty, drop the mic and end this video now, but that's not really fair to you. So let's get into this debate, and we'll start with what we know. The major difference between the two is physical activity. And, granted, there aren't many esports where a ridiculous 40-yard dash time will help you out, that's for sure. But we can't really say that esports and sports are that different when the two are actually more similar. It's like saying Fruit Loops aren't cereal because they aren't healthy or something, but Raisin Bran is. Now, you might not agree with me so far, but think about this. The way we define sport changes constantly as we as a society evolve. 20 years ago, we didn't think that poker was a sport, but now ESPN reports on poker as much as they report on soccer. And yes, shade was indeed just thrown. As far as publicity goes, in the early days of sport broadcast television, ESPN had major difficulties explaining to cable companies that their network would succeed. All of this in spite of the fact of the popularity of sports among the general public, even at that time. So another difference here is that while it took 100 years for the NHL, for example, to go from having one of their entire teams, the appropriately named 228th Battalion, literally be called away to fight in World War I, to now where players and athletes are making millions and enjoying rockstar status, esports has created this progression in less than 20 years, virtually. Now, I know what you're thinking. Why do I need to care about all this? Well, I'll tell you why. The issue of accepting esports as sports is in fact a social issue, believe it or not. My point here is that you don't have to feel the hype that 10.5 million other people feel every time there's a new Call of Duty tournament that starts, to make a difference in this situation. You don't have to like video games in order to make this better. So, holding esports as high as athletic sports is actually quite easy, and the process will eventually happen on its own. All we have to do here is recognize the achievements of others. If someone were to spend months on a stunning watercolor painting, or spend a whole year perfecting their half volley for a soccer shot, shouldn't the person that spends months perfecting smoke grenade positioning or sniper dueling get that same respect? Certain competitive video games, or esports, can and should be considered real sports because of all this. Now, let's move on to the final portion of my presentation. I've made a little montage of this past year's ESL Counter-Strike Championships to show all of you the things that we've learned today in action. Pay attention to the players, their reactions, the roar of the fans, and all of the emotions involved, and see if you can point out all the similarities between esports and actual sports as well. I hope you all have enjoyed this presentation and maybe learned something as well. This is who we are, and this is why we play.
C'est parti les mecs!